to the OnScript podcast, your home for world-class conversations on scripture and theology, where you get to meet some of the best in the field. Visit us at onscript.study. Say hello on Twitter at OnScript Podcast and stop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/OnScript.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the OnScript podcast. This is Matt Lynch coming to you from Regent College in Vancouver. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we have Chris Tilling bringing an episode. I know a lot of you thought he went dormant, but no, he's alive and well. And so we're grateful to Chris for an episode. And I also want to just ask if you could help us as we move into the holiday season to share the word about OnScript. If you have listened to us in the past, you know that that's a great time of year to disseminate the good news of what we're trying to do here at the podcast. One idea, just to throw one out there, is if you're gathered around the table and the discussion starts to get tense, let's say it turns to politics or vaccines or mask mandates, and the opinions are divisive and heated, that's your moment. That's your moment to stand up and say, I think we can all agree that we need to vaccinate against theological ignorance. And one way that we can do that is listen to OnScript, and then get your phone ready and just hit play, start an episode, maybe even this one. And I think that could serve as a rallying point for promoting family unity in a divided era that we live in. So that's just one idea, and also it would also help us out because it'll get the word out there about what we're doing. One other important announcement that I want to make here is that at the annual Society of Biblical Literature meeting in San Antonio, which is held in conjunction with the American Academy of Religion, we're going to be holding a live OnScript event there. And it's sponsored by InterVarsity Press, which we're grateful to them for. And we'll fill you in on details, but it's going to be on Monday, the 22nd of November in San Antonio, probably at 9 p.m. And we'll have a live recording and a chance to connect with some of you. So if you already are planning to attend AAR, SBL, or live in the San Antonio area, or heck, maybe you want to fly in for it, that would be great. It would be wonderful to connect with some of you, and it's going to be a good time. So stay tuned for details. We'll put them on our website as they become known to us. We'll make them known to you. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy this episode.
Well, welcome to OnScript, and today it's my pleasure to introduce once again. He's already been on the show before, where he was speaking about his essay looking at Pistis Christou with Matt Bates, that is. And it was a fascinating episode, actually, and I recommend people go back and have a listen to that one, because some of the theory that we're going to be talking about today is applied very much there with the whole Pistis Christou debate. But Kevin Grasso is about to obtain his PhD from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Hebrew, as well as an MA. He has in Comparative Religion, and he previously did an MA in Linguistics at Dallas International University. His work focuses on applying theoretical linguistics, and particularly syntax and semantics, to the biblical languages for the purpose of exegesis. And within biblical studies, he is interested in faith, law, and messiahship, and how Second Temple Judaism conceived of each of these categories. So certainly overlaps with many of my interests here. He lives just outside Atlanta with his wife Rachel and son Emmett, and will soon be joined, this is exciting, by Rhoda and Olivia, two daughters he is adopting from Liberia in a few weeks. That's something, goodness. So you're going to be outnumbered big time.
Yeah,
in the
very
home.
Quickly. Switching from double team to zone.
Well, welcome anyway back to OnScript. So today we really wanted to have a chat about a language course, Biblingo. Now, I don't know how many of you listeners have heard of this, but I discovered this about a few months ago. I'm writing a commentary for the NICNT series at the moment on 2 Corinthians, and my Greek is okay, but it's always, I always need to keep it oiled, to keep using it, use it or lose it. And I'm no great linguist. The only reason I can read German is because I've got a German wife and I lived in Germany for a number of years, but I don't have the same history with New Testament Greek. I've just applied a bunch of mnemonics to help me learn some vocab and muscled my way through an ancient grammar. And when I say ancient, it's not ancient Greek. The grammar is ancient in order to read the New Testament. But I realized that I have a lot to learn. And Biblingo attracted my attention for a number of reasons that we will be getting into today. But first, it applied language learning techniques that I had actually been using in relation to my chess, believe it or not language learning, but spaced repetition. And it promised just a daily routine for language learning, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the course. Now, this isn't a sponsored thing. I'm a paying customer for Biblingo. It's worthwhile saying that. I haven't been given any special discounts or anything of the kind, but I thought it would be good to have a chat with Kevin about the course, which he's pioneered together with Nick Messmer. Because it really is a unique learning platform for learning biblical languages. So Kevin, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what your vision is for Biblingo.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, originally we actually, I was at Dallas International University. This was, 6-7 years ago. And I thought of this idea to have this sort of Rosetta Stone-like, Duolingo-like thing for the biblical languages, specifically for Bible translators, right? And so my thinking was, okay, you have all of these people all over the world that are translating the Bible into different languages. And the problem is that they really have to learn some other language right now. So you might have to learn English or Spanish or whatever language there would be a grammar in, right? In order to then learn Greek or Hebrew. And so that to me it didn't make sense, right? That we can't have everyone learning English, for example. Some random person in Indonesia has to learn some other language just to get access to these grammars. And so my thinking was, okay, as much as possible, we need to make this accessible, right? And that's really the issue, is how do we make this accessible to more people? The way that Rosetta Stone does this is they use videos and pictures and that kind of thing, right? And so our idea was to found the program based on more second language acquisition principles, and really to use a lot of videos and visuals and audio in the language, right? Get you using the language as much as possible. And so that original vision for the Bible translators, has obviously expanded. And so now at this point, we're really targeting anyone, but with the same idea that, okay, let's get, let's develop a program to where anyone off the street can come in and they can start using the program and start to learn Greek or Hebrew, right? And this is what, we have. We have a wide spectrum of ranges, from 5 to 70s, right? Of people who are lay people, pastors, translators, just all kinds of different people using the program. And the reason why they can is because, it is based on these principles that we know work for learning languages, right? So that's the basic vision.
Thanks. And for someone like myself, I'm writing a commentary. It's my profession. It's always important to keep myself well oiled in the languages. But as you have just made clear, your vision is for a wide audience, for those who are lay and just interested, as well as professionals. But I guess some will be saying, why bother? Okay, Chris, it makes sense for you because you're a professional in this, but can't we just read English translations? What benefits, apart from, maybe impressing an impressionable congregation or obtaining good grades at seminary or in impressing someone you fancy, who knows what? Why study Greek or Hebrew at this level?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it really is a serious one. It's not that. Should everyone learn Greek? Probably not, right? There's a reason why the gospel has been translated into so many languages, and we want to translate it, right? And I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, you really are. There is a difference between a translation and the original, and there has to be a sector, of the church that is well versed in these languages. And part of the problem is that our competency in the languages, in general, has been declining, right? We've been relying more and more on helps and all of these things that are great, but that are ultimately founded on our knowledge of the languages. And so, those helps are only as good as our knowledge. And so we always have to have people that are looking at the original text and saying, okay, what is Paul really trying to say here? Because if the translation is necessarily an interpretation, right? And it is to varying degrees. But if you screen out some of the interpretive issues in a translation, right, you just don't have access to potentially what Paul intended, right? Because that translation could be a misinterpretation. And of course, like most of the time, we can trust our translations. But the issue is that there are hard passages, right? And so people will look at two different translations and they'll say something different. And the reality is you can't engage in that sort of debate unless you know the original, right? You just don't have access to it. So I think that's the biggest thing is if you really want to get into some of the more foundational or tougher like theological questions that we're talking about today, like you have to have recourse to the biblical languages.
Yeah, indeed. This is one of the challenges I find in higher education is cultivating a love for languages, and to see the benefits that it can bring. I remember being told by my teacher, I think it was Philip Esler actually, who mentioned this back when I was learning Greek at introductory level. He would say little knowledge goes a long way, and I think that's true in many ways. A little knowledge can immerse you into a world of possibilities and options and questions that just wouldn't have emerged otherwise. But what your course is doing is taking the student beyond that into good language proficiency. What sort of ranges are you hoping to attract in the course?
Yeah, we. I mentioned this earlier. We have kids using the program, but also professors, and so the idea is that the way humans learn languages is by practice, and so again, it's something. The way I always compare it is what I always compare it to is like a sport or an instrument, right? So if you're playing an instrument, you need to practice, and that's true of the complete beginner and the professional, right? And so the idea is that we are trying to set up the program to where anyone at any level can practice, right? And so that's the idea, and I think we've done that fairly well. So at this point, professionals like yourself, I think, can have real benefit, especially because a lot of people aren't used to producing in the languages. And so, when you ask them to speak or type for the first time in Greek, it's a different muscle you're exercising, right? And so at that point too, it's I think pretty much, we've seen a lot of people who have taken Greek, but have benefited, from starting at the beginning and just going through it in a way that's different than what they've done before.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I probably will bore people with this, but I've mentioned before on OnScript that I'm a chess player, and I really enjoy Chessable, which is a web-based chess learning platform that uses spaced repetition in order to help you improve, learn opening variations, tactics, things like that. And one of the most astonishing things about it is that you see your learning by means of active repetition. You need to repeat what you've just learned. And it can be hugely satisfying to see how you're growing and how those muscles that you're exercising can be used now, And that's one of the things that I think attracted me to Biblingo, is that a similar effect takes place when you're testing yourself immediately. You're active in your learning, and you see, hang on, this is working. So maybe we could look at what's in the tin. What is in the course, and maybe we could just begin with a slightly more general question, because back in the day I got Randall Booth's Living Koine Greek, which I wouldn't say well, there's some similarities. You've got to look at pictures and you hear an audio, and then slowly but surely you're building up your grammar and your vocabulary. Maybe many don't know Randall Booth's Living Koine Greek, but I can still hear the voice saying "trapiza" in the background to this day. But how is Biblingo different from what Randall Booth produced in Living Koine Greek?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have to say, Randall and Christoph Rigo as well, who is at the Police Institute in Jerusalem, they really have been pioneers in this, in the field, and really what they did was they took, second language acquisition methods, and they said, okay, how can we apply this to the biblical languages? So that being said, I think the two biggest distinctives between what we have and what Booth has is one is just the amount. Well, three things. One is the amount of content. It's just we have built a course that would be, the equivalent of. Right now what we have is something like the equivalent of 2 semesters, and we'll be adding about a third more content. And so you don't need to supplement it with anything if you don't want to. So in that sense, there's just probably more content than the Living Koine Greek materials. The other thing is the Bible reading. So we will get to this later, I think, but we have the full biblical text marked up according to every word, and so that's the kind of thing that he just doesn't have. The second thing I think is the second language acquisition theory. So his materials, at the time were very good, but they, at this point, we've learned a lot since he first published that material, right? And so we're trying to kind of update some of our material with more modern methods. We do this in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that you mentioned, right, was trying to get you to actively produce it as quickly as possible, right? Whereas BLC, so I've studied with BLC. I did Hebrew in Jerusalem, so I did the actual book, and then I did the class as well, and at least in the class and what I experienced is, they advocate for this sort of delayed speech. And there's a reason why people have done this in second language acquisition. It was supposed to mirror first language acquisition. Just babies listen and comprehend a lot. And then, after a year or whatever, they start to speak. But this really hasn't shown to be an effective way to learn a second language, right? Which is different. Or the most effective way. Okay. So, so in that respect too, we are a bit different. And then the third, big piece is the software, right? When we just have, with software, it's, again, we can track every answer you have. We can do the spaced repetition. Those kinds of things are very, very easy to, they're not easy to build into the software, but once you build them into the software, they can be used in a variety of ways. And that's a pretty distinctive feature.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I remember there were some words that I typed in wrong in a test, and they appear in my review lists automatically because of the way the software platform implements that, which I find absolutely fascinating. So in the course itself, you've got the language learning, which is perhaps the heart of it all. Can you unpack, what are user experiences and what they are gaining from the second language learning methods that you've applied?
Yeah. So when you enter into a lesson, the first thing you'll see is a grammar video. So I'll be explaining what you'll learn in that lesson. Just very short videos we're actually going to redo in the near future. But basically the idea is just to orient you to what kind of grammar you will see. And then we have a lesson guide as well for the same purpose. And then you'll go through this progression from what we call the association, passive, and active stage. So you'll do this for 4 to 6 vocabulary words. And the idea is what you'll see is a picture or a GIF of whatever verb or noun that you're learning or word, and you'll hear the Greek, audio, and so the idea is the association stage. You're pairing the audio and the text with the meaning found in the picture, right? That's the idea. And then in the passive stage, you have the picture, and you have to choose the correct Greek word that goes along with it. And then in the active stage, you see the picture, and you have to describe it either by speaking it, by typing it, or with a word bank. And so the idea is that you learn something best when you have depth of processing. So this is what we say, right? Is that it's both depth of processing and repetitive practice, right? And so the reason why we're trying to get you to produce it as quickly as possible is because it increases the depth of processing. It's much harder, right, to produce something, or even in the teaching world, it's much harder to teach something rather than to just passively listen to a lecture, right? And you have to know it so much better to teach it, right? And this, we all kind of know this with other fields. So the idea is that we want to get you as quickly as possible to the point where you're describing the world, right, in Koine Greek. You see the world and you say, okay, I know what this means, or how to describe this in Greek. So we're trying to get you to that point in a way that isn't overwhelming, right? And so that's why we have these stages. And then, so you go through this with vocabulary, and then you go through it with grammar, the same thing. So we're basically treating a grammatical item, in the same way. So in order to learn, the present indicative third person, right? What you need is, practice. And so you start with the association, with a sentence, ho anthropos krasde, right? And then you go through the association stage with that, and there's a video that we filmed in Israel that is paired with that, and then you go through the passive and then the active. So again, you're producing this sentence. So the idea is that when you read the text, you will know what the world was like, because you have learned to describe the world, right, in Greek, right? That's what we're after, is that when we read the text of the Greek New Testament or Hebrew Bible, that we are picturing in our minds what that world is like, and not just reading the English through it, right? Because at that point, it's not helpful to us. So that's what we're trying to get you to be able to, describe the world in the original language.
And it is quite funny how it does that for you. It's one of the ways of learning a second language. One of the techniques is to use little sticky labels and stick everything around the house. But write on what it is. So they say you got a cup. So you might, in German, Tasse, or topoterion in Greek, just bung it on, stick it on, and effectively that's what you're doing. You're doing all of that work for people so that they can start to interpret the world around them using the language. Immersive, I suppose, is another way of putting it. So when you say depth of processing, you mean is this something that's happening both because of the active learning and because of the visual association with the GIF or GIF, or however you pronounce that?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, people have studied, okay, how do you best learn a vocabulary word? Is it through a picture, or is it through, let's say a translation? Part of the problem with a picture is that they're often ambiguous, right? If you see a picture of a man, it could be a variety of things, right? A variety of words into English that you could describe, the man reasonably with. But the issue is, that we don't want to rely completely on the picture, but yes, the idea is that we use the picture and the audio, right? All of these things for depth of processing are hugely important. That you would hear it again and that you would see it, but then that you would also be forced to use it. Is that key step that a lot of people just don't take, right? You're not usually asked to do that in a normal language, in a normal Greek class, right? And so even if you did, more translation, from English to Greek, right? I think that would be better because it forces you to ask questions about the Greek that you wouldn't otherwise ask. Okay, I understand the English. Like, how do I get to the Greek from here? Is a different question. And so that's the kind of exercises that we're trying to force you into, so that, like I said, you understand the Greek just like you would understand the English.
Yeah. And as an example, there's Uranos. What you have in the course is just a picture of the sky. It's a blue sky with some clouds, if I remember rightly. But you'd usually get a gloss, wouldn't you, in a book with a vocabulary and heaven, perhaps. And that really does take you in a very different direction, that kind of association and gloss. But that leaves it open, doesn't it, the picture, I guess, because of its ambiguity. But so there's the language learning, which is everything you've just spoken about. But you have other, is it modules? Is that how you put it? You've got the Bible reading module. You've got the flashcard decks, the alphabet lessons. Can you tell us a little bit about what they're doing?
Yeah. Maybe I should back up a little bit too, because what I forgot to mention about the language learning, the two key components that are related to the Bible reading module are the reading comprehension and the fluency drills. So the reading comprehension, the problem is with a lot of people, they get, I know it will sound funny, but they jump into the New Testament text too quickly. The issue is that it's too hard for people. When you're just learning a language, you need to be taken, by the hand, and just like guided, through baby steps, right? Through text. And so the idea is that we've written these stories, these reading comprehension stories, that are the baby steps, right? So we're trying to build this sort of on-ramp into the text. And so as you progress through the program, you're getting more and more biblical texts or biblical-like texts, as you learn more grammar, as you learn more vocabulary. But in the beginning, what you need is something that's comprehensible. And the studies that have been done on reading say that really you should understand 98% of the words in the text. That's kind of like at your level if you were trying to progress in the language. So there's 2% that you shouldn't know, and most people never get there with the New Testament, right? And so the issue is that what ends up happening is that you're not focusing on the skill of reading, because you don't know enough words, right? You're stopping every other line at multiple words, and it's not the same as the skill of reading. So what we've tried to do with this is just create these short stories, very easy. They progressively get harder, right? But we know that they're on your level because we're using only the grammar and vocabulary that you know, right? So there's the reading comprehension and then the fluency drills as well. We basically use the same spaced repetition technique and put it into the grammar. So let's say you've learned the present active indicative. We would just put that into a spaced repetition algorithm and allow you to practice that paradigm in the context of a sentence. So, you might see, ho anthropos kras, right? And you have to put in, whatever conjugation is correct. And then, the next one might be ego kras, right? Just like you would, to parse. But what we've done is put that again into this algorithm so that you can practice in a way that makes sense. So all of that is designed, right, to get you into the text, right? That's our ultimate goal, is to get you into the text in a way that makes sense. So that when you go to the text, you're confident, you're reading it with comprehension, right? And so that's where the Bible reading module comes in, and that's really the next sort of stepping stone. So what we've done is we have a Greek New Testament, and we've created a system where we're keeping track of every single word you learn, right, in the program. So if you've learned a word in the language learning module, what ends up happening is that it changes color in the Bible reading module. It basically says, okay, you've learned this word before, and what that does is it increases the percentage, right? This is the key, right? The percentage of words you know in that chapter. And because what we want to get you to is that 98%, right? To where you're reading and you're learning some vocabulary words, but you're reading the text like it's a text. And so basically what you can do with that information is you can sort the entire Bible by chapter or by book based on the amount of words you know in that chapter or book, right? So this creates basically a customized graded reader, right? So what it's very, very powerful for people that already know the languages, right? They can immediately jump into this. You can basically archive by frequency. So if you haven't, done the language learning module, you can just say, hey, I already know every word above 25 times frequency. Mark all those as known, and then you can just work through texts, right? Again, in a way that makes sense according to your level. And so along with that, what you can do is, so if you come across a word you don't know, you can click on it, you see a definition in our dictionary, and you can add that to a flashcard deck, right? And that flashcard deck goes through the same 3 stages: association, passive, and active. So you can go practice there. And then once you do practice, it's thrown into that spaced repetition loop, right? And so just the idea is that you can get as far as you want, right? With New Testament Greek, you can start in the language learning module. You can progress to where you can read the text, whatever chapter is easiest for you, and then you can read through all the chapters or all the books in the Bible, and learn all the words in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah. So I think it is so exciting because it gets you into the text in a way that doesn't give you a headache. When I was learning German at the start, I was reading a chess book, but with a dictionary next to me, and I didn't know the vocabulary. I probably only knew about 15% of the words on a page. You get through very slowly. It's not satisfying. It's frustrating, actually. It can be dispiriting. But after you've done 10, 15 lessons in Biblingo, I think you'll find, the Johannine epistles, quite a lot of the vocabulary is already covered there. And it's like a graded reader, as you say. You can start diving into the text in a way that demonstrates understanding. It's a lot of fun. So there's the Bible reading module. Now, tell me a little bit about the flashcard decks.
Yeah. So these are, just basically a set of decks that you can create, and we have some like preset decks in there as well. So you can create them in really 2 ways. Like I said, you can go through the Bible reading module, click on a word, add it to a flashcard deck, right? The other thing you can do is you can just generate decks based on book or semantic domain. So you can say, okay, give me all the words that talk about, houses, right? And you can just generate a flashcard deck with all of those words, really all those senses of words. So we teach, basically we want you to learn each sense of the word rather than just saying each word. So the idea is that, you can, you need to learn vocabulary, right? I mean, and this has unfortunately been kind of neglected in language study. Again, it's been the kind of thing people have said, okay, well, you can look it up. But that's just the whole point of learning the language, is to learn the nuances of the words, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And so, yeah, so you can generate decks based on these semantic domains, or you can generate them based on the books or chapters of the Bible. So you can just say, okay, I'm reading through Matthew. Why don't I generate, a deck for every word I don't know? I'll generate a deck for Matthew 1 to 5. And then you can study those words, and so that when you go to the text, you know those words, right? You've seen them. And so that's the powerful thing about it, again, is that we can kind of cater it to you. And then the alphabet lessons are really just, introductory, simple, lessons to learn the alphabet. They do use the same sort of association, passive and active stage, again, to get you, using it as quickly as possible.
Now, all of these, there's the alphabet lessons as well, but we should probably just move on, apart from what's in the tin, to think about some of the pedagogy involved, some of the theory. And I sort of vague acquaintance with some language learning techniques, not only because of the Aramaic, Hebrew and Greek when at university, but because of later on with the German, of using mnemonic devices, the visual picture association, and where you make an abstract word into something that you can visualize, and then you visually associate it with something else in order to be a memory cue. Not really useful for fluency. That just takes practice. But as a sort of cramming everything in quickly, it's quite a useful technique. And then, as I've mentioned, there's the whole spaced repetition, which I swear by for my chess. It's certainly helped my chess. But these and other things are pedagogical tools that I've used but I notice the course applies this and many others besides. There's the day streaks, the points you get, maybe enlisting dopamine in the whole process of learning. Can you tell us what pedagogical tools, language learning tools, apart from the ones you've already spoken about, have you mobilized in the course?
Yeah. One of the things that you've said, right, is enlisting dopamine. We want you to enjoy it, right? And so we've tried to structure it in a way that you don't view it as the sitting with your German dictionary and just trudging through. That's really, you can learn a language that way, right? But it's just most people don't, and this is an important point. Most people don't learn a language that way because they can't sustain motivation, right? And that's actually a huge part of language learning, is how do we get people to continue, right? And the way you do that is you make it fun, right? It doesn't have to be like, I don't know. Some people say it's very fun and addictive. I personally, it's very hard for me to get into that user perspective because I'm behind the scenes. But just engaging senses, engaging different parts of your brain, it's just so different, right, than just staring at a text. And so that's the kind of thing that we've tried to do. You can create plans. You can. We have all kinds of other things in the future too. Being able to follow people, for example, would be a big one that we would work on. But I don't know if we're also talking about the theory, second language acquisition theory here, or more of just the tools. I was going to get to the second language acquisition theory, but maybe just before we get there, this was more about the tools, the more general question, but. Pronunciation. This is quite a big issue for some, isn't it? And I remember back in the day when I was taught with Erasmus pronunciation guide. Just everybody was, and I don't think there were options back then in the 90s, at least not to my knowledge. But I did get a hold of Chris Karagounis's massive volume at some stage while working on my PhD. And had fun correspondence with him about all that. And he actually produced software to help shift to, what did he call it? Historic Greek pronunciation? I forget. It's terrible. Sorry, Chris. But what you've offered on the course, I think, are 3 options. Is that correct? So you've got Erasmus Greek? Yeah, 4 actually.
4? Okay. This is just for Greek. So what are they again?
So, they're Erasmus, and, Erasmus also varies. So it's American Erasmus. And then we have Koine. So this is like Booth, just Booth's reconstructed. And then we have early high Koine. So this is the one that most people probably wouldn't know about. This is what's used at the Police Institute in Jerusalem. So Christoph Rico. It's closer to like Attic, honestly, than pronunciation than all the other ones. And then you have modern. So those are the four we have: Erasmian, Koine, early high Koine, modern.
I was privy to a fun online discussion or debate on Facebook on these issues. Some saying, look, it doesn't matter what pronunciation you use, others being very insistent that no. And it's got to be said, when I encountered Chris Karagounis' work and his software, I was amazed how much like a language the Greek New Testament sounded, rather than, kai, theos, in, ho, logos, and that sort of thing. But I've decided to opt. I've changed again. I've gone for modern Greek, simply because I'm going to be on holiday every now and then in Greece. So why not, use my language acquisition to help me speak to order a beer if I need to. Because I once tried in Crete to speak to someone, and all I knew at the time was Erasmus Greek. And I tried to start off a conversation with this butchered pronunciation, and I got some blank looks. Not angry, but blank looks. But anyway, this is something fun for users to explore, and you've probably got a podcast or something on these, haven't you? An option, the options and pros and cons and such like.
Yeah, we go through it in the alphabet lessons. Personally, I think people get a little too upset about this whole issue. The reason why we did it is because we know, that this is an issue for people. But at the end of the day, you and I use different vowels, right? We understand each other perfectly fine most of the time, and so it's very much like that. You can learn the language, right? Using a lot of different pronunciation systems, and what's important is that you stick with it and you practice a lot, right? I could learn to speak, like a Brit if I practiced a lot, right? And that's just how it works. But it is different, to learn a pronunciation system is different than learning the language.
Now, well, let's come back then to the issue that you raised just now, the second language acquisition theory. Perhaps you could talk us through some of these principles and how it's applied in Biblingo in general terms.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest influences here is Paul Nation. So he's done a lot of work. He's been in the field for 50 years. A lot of work just on English second language acquisition, and really, it works the same, right, more or less across the board. So he divides language learning into 4 strands. So it's language-focused learning, fluency development, meaning-focused output, and meaning-focused input. So the language-focused learning is usually what people in language classes spend 95% of their time on. It's learning about the language without using the language, right? So his argument is that each of these strands should be 25% of the course. So it's not that you neglect, talking about the grammar, right? Anyone that knows me knows that I love grammar, but you don't actually need to know the grammar to know the language, and that's a really important point. If you walk out on the street and ask a random person what's the passive participle of break, they're probably not going to know the answer, even though they're a native speaker of English and they could use it immediately and they could understand it, right? And so learning the grammar is just something different. It's helpful, especially when you're learning a second language. We know this, but it's a different skill that you're developing. So this is 25% of the language learning, and so for us, that's built into these short videos at the beginning, these lesson guides, really, that you could skip in theory and still learn the language.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing is, my wife is German, so her mother tongue is German, but her English is as good as mine, frankly. But nonetheless, she can explain to others English grammatical concepts far better than I can. She studied it at university, which obviously helps, but the nature of participles and gerunds and how they relate and all of these things, I wouldn't have the foggiest how to begin. Nonetheless, of course, my ability to understand texts is superior simply because of the number of words that I know. Not that you'd see that often, and frankly, she knows. Well, maybe I shouldn't even say it's superior, but I take the point. That's I see that very much. Any other principles that were worthwhile mentioning?
Yeah, I think the other big strand that's important for us. I mean, we incorporate all four of these, but is fluency, and this is something that again is just not built into the typical Greek or Hebrew class, and so fluency has to do with practicing what you already know, and developing that skill. And so for example, in our reading comprehension stories, you'll see one story, and then the next lesson you'll see an identical story, but let's say in first person, right? And so what we're trying to do there is get you to become more fluent in how you use what you know. And so if for anyone that's learned to speak another language, you know, like, okay, when you go to actually speak, it has to be fast, right? And it feels very fast, right? But it has to be, in a communicative setting in a way that doesn't, slow people down and all of these things. And so in order to get there, you don't have to just know the words. You have to be able to spit out the words, right? Almost unconsciously, right? I'm not thinking about every single word I'm saying now, right? I'm trying to articulate thoughts, right? And so that's where fluency is a huge component that is sorely neglected. And one of the reasons why I think people, come out of Greek not being able to read very well, is because they haven't developed this fluency in reading, right? They haven't read through enough text that they understand. So for Paul Nation's principle for fluency reading is you should know 100% of the words. It should be an easy text, right? You should read. I mean, for Greek, we should be reading, dozens of children's books, right? The equivalent of children's books in Greek, right? Because that's at our level when we're starting out, right? And so we have to develop this skill of reading, and that's really the best way to do it.
Now, I think it's probably time for a quick fire round. Now, I've been struggling to come up with some questions, and you've already been, on OnScript before, but so I've tried to come up with some new ones. So imagine 50 years into the future, looking back at us today, what do you think people are going to be most nostalgic for?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is maybe a depressing answer, but wilderness.
Say that again?
Wilderness.
Wilderness. Huh. That's a good answer. I like that one. I wouldn't have thought of that one. Okay, so favorite film?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. Absolutely. Now, which New Testament scholar have you benefited from the most?
Probably N.T. Wright.
N.T. Wright. I think many of us can say that. And Now, who would win an arm wrestle? Stanley Porter or Con Campbell?
So, I haven't met them. So it's hard for me to say, but I from seeing pictures, I think it'd probably be Con Campbell.
Right answer, indeed. Okay, so he's ripped. Okay,
right,
so
that's what I thought.
So Randall Booth or Con Campbell?
Con Campbell.
You or Con Campbell?
Probably him.
Man. Yeah, all right. Well, fair enough.
I'll give it to him. I'll give that to him.
Okay, well done, Con. What's the most ridiculous fact that you know?
I don't know. I mean, maybe, there's more, ants have more biomass than almost anything. So that's pretty
ridiculous. Yeah, that's right up there.
Way more than elephants and whales and, just as... Yeah, I don't know how ridiculous that counts for. But
I think it's pretty ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous. So, finally, a little bit more seriously, I guess, but because the course is is designed. You've spoken about the vision of Biblingo, and your own work has all been about helping exegesis, engaging with these texts. So what aspect of modern exegetical practice worries you the most, and perhaps say what encourages you the most?
Yeah, so I think I would say the same answer to both of these questions, and it is the linguistic theory. What worries me the most is misapplication and misunderstanding of linguistic theory. What encourages me is that people are trying to get into linguistic theory, but there really is there's a lot of misinformation about frankly what linguists are saying. And so I think that's one of the most worrying things, because it definitely, it affects how people interpret the text, how people do exegesis. But at the same time, there's hope in that, because people are beginning to look into these theories really for in a new way for the first time.
Yeah. My doctoral supervisor was Max Turner. And back in the, I don't know, was it the 90s? Peter Cottrell and Max Turner penned the book Linguistics and Biblical Interpretation. So it's always been on my radar. But I've been quite overwhelmed by the amount of information that needs to be processed. And so the Linguistics and New Testament Greek, there was Key Issues in Current Debate book that came out not so long ago, edited by David Black and Benjamin Merkley, and I absolutely. I think these are vital for engaging with the Greek. So maybe we can turn a little bit now to the linguistic theory involved in Biblingo. Whether you're reading Bill Mounce or Dan Wallace, there's a certain set of commitments and understanding of the relationship between linguistic theory, what lexemes do, syntax, a whole host of issues that will be different from more recent grammars. I haven't gone through it yet, but the ancient Greek grammar by Heinrich von Siebenthal has just been translated into English. But, Stephen Runge, who's bringing out other emphases, or Stanley Porter, and then the debates around aspect theory. There's so much there. But in what ways does Biblingo differ? And I mean this pedagogically as well as theoretically from some of the main other options, the grammars that are on the table. Right.
Yeah. So, I think the biggest difference, in this respect, is more of my background, So I have studied, so my PhD is going to be in Hebrew, but every class I took was in the linguistics department, right? So I'm basically got my PhD in linguistics. And for me, what I've tried to do is go away from the debates, study linguistics, and then come back, right? And so as far as like what position we would take, we're just going to draw on, semantics literature, right, for tense and aspect. And we actually have a series on this on our podcast, where I interview Nora Bonet, who's well-known linguist who works on tense and aspect, and we discuss really the what you would discuss in the first class, right, in a class on tense and aspect, but it's gotten actually a lot of really good feedback because the foundation is so important, and we often have a bad foundation, and so she just lays out, and we just go through the principles, right, the basic definitions and terms and that kind of thing. So as far as pedagogically, we try to teach things quite slowly. So, we want to say, okay, we're not going to teach you everything there is to know about aspect, when you learn the present tense, and that's okay. We don't have to teach you all the uses of the present tense when you learn that. But what we want to do is introduce you to these concepts. How does time fit into aspect, and what are the different aspects, and how does that relate to the verbal system? And then, slowly we introduce you to more of the nuances and the different uses. Whereas in a book like, let's say, Wallace, for example, you're going to read the present chapter and you're just going to get it's a fire hose of all the different uses of the present, right? Which is fine, but we want you to acquire the language along with the grammar. So we're just going to do that just much more slowly as time, as you go through the lessons.
Is there a grammar that you recommend to read alongside Biblingo that sort of dovetails with what you're doing a little more concretely, or not?
I mean, it's really hard for me when I get asked this question. It's really hard for me because, I mean, we use different terms, right? Like, even something like aspect, I couldn't really point you to a Greek grammarian inside the New Testament that talks about aspect in the way that we do. And so it is, I mean, I would say, like, kind of take your pick and go through it and just understand, that we're coming at it from a different angle. And sometimes, the terms are different and sometimes the theory is different, right? The analysis is different. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
I mean, you discuss deponent verbs a little bit. I'm putting quotation marks around deponent for the purists out there, by the way. You do, of course, you get into tense and aspect. In fact, I thought it was really interesting how you present verbal semantics in terms of topic time of situation, and time of utterance, and how these three relate, and you visualize these. There are these little pictures that you associate with each in order to give a visual representation of what's required in the active learning process. And can you say something about the way you present verbal semantics and what these things mean? Topic time of situation, and time of utterance.
Yeah. So, again, if you want a fuller explanation, you'd have to listen to our podcast on this. But, in 2 minutes, basically, topic time is the time that you're talking about, right? So, and this really goes back to Reichenbach, who talked about event time, reference time, and speech time. These terms are from Klein, Time and Language, 1994. Very influential theory of tense and aspect. So within semantics, topic time is the time that you're talking about. So that time is related to two other time intervals or points. So there's a time of utterance. So that's what tense is. Tense is a relationship between the topic time and the time of utterance. So basically what it is if I'm talking about, let's say, 1984, right? And my time of speech is after 1984, then I'm going to put that in past tense, right? Very simply, that sentence, in 1984, Ronald Reagan was president, right? So that's the kind of thing that, you have a relationship between two intervals, and that's what tense is, or a point in an interval. And then aspect is just a relationship between the topic time and the time of situation, right? Which are, again, two intervals. So again, it gets way more complicated, but the progressive in English, right, is normally called imperfective. We'll just call it the progressive. So if I said, I was walking to the store, what I'm saying is that I was in the middle where I hadn't completed that action of walking to the store. And so in that case, the topic time is included within the time of situation. So the idea is that I can't see the end of my walking to the store because I hadn't gotten there yet, right? So that means that the time I'm talking about does not include the endpoint of the runtime of the situation, right? That's what imperfective is. Or progressive. Again, it gets way more complicated. But then the opposite is, I walked to the store, in which case the time of situation is included within the topic time, which means I've just reached the endpoint. Whenever we say I walked to the store, we know that the endpoint of me being at the store has been reached, right? And so that's the basic distinction. And then there's, obviously the perfect and all kinds of different relationships we can give between these two time intervals. But this is, within semantics, the semantics literature, this is not really debated, right? In the sense that everyone knows that this is what aspect is, this is what tense is. There are fine-grained nuances between languages and how do we analyze this, how do we analyze that. But at the end of the day, they are relationship between intervals of time. That's just what aspect and tense are in semantics literature.
Brilliant. And because given that we've name dropped Con Campbell, his advances in the study of Greek was, but at least for me, it was helpful in terms of aspect. And he uses some helpful analogies or pictures in order to describe the difference in aspect. The whole procession, whether you're by the side of the road or seeing it from a helicopter, I think others use that as well. But all of that makes a lot of sense to me. And so thank you for clarifying it. A couple of other issues of contemporary linguistic theory enrich the Bibliolingo course. And just maybe you could give us a comment on a couple of those before we wrap things up. Because you teach verbs in a particular way, and you teach verbs with arguments. An argument just is the word that's needed to complete the thought of another word. So maybe you could say a little bit about what you're doing there with teaching verbs with arguments, and maybe also, which is the second, is teaching content verbs and conjunctions, and how you manage that and what you're doing with that.
Yeah. So this took a lot of hashing out to do. But basically the idea is that, like you said, an argument is just another word that completes the thought of something else. So verbs, like a transitive verb, will take an argument, another word that completes that thought. So what is important about that is that the argument can show up in different ways syntactically, or morphologically. So you might have an argument in genitive case, you might have an argument in dative case, you might have an argument as a preposition, or showing up as a prepositional complement. And so the idea is that when you learn a verb, you don't necessarily know what morphological case that argument is going to take. So for example, in English, touch takes accusative, right? This is actually pretty abnormal. Touch in many languages will not take accusative case, but in English it does. And so when the Greek student gets to hoptomai, right, and they say, oh, okay, like I would assume it takes accusative case, right, because that's what they see in English. Turns out it's the genitive, right, for verbs of touching in Greek, and that's pretty normal. Like I said, across languages, English is the abnormal one, but the idea is that we don't know what language you are speaking. We don't know what language you're going to, or what case you might assume, right? Is going to be present in this case. And so what we need to do is teach verbs with their arguments, right? So to say, okay, I'm not just going to learn hoptomai, right? But I'm going to learn hoptomai, autes, right? To know that this takes an argument in in genitive case. And what's interesting too is that sometimes what you have is different meanings when you have different cases. So that again would be something that we would kind of build in. If we're going to teach different senses, we're going to teach it each sense with the argument structure that it takes. So and then there's content verbs. So these are verbs like pisteuo, for example, that I've worked a lot on. If you compare like believe and know, for example, in English. What they are is relationships between the believer or knower and a certain, content, right? And that content, you can actually depict, right, in a video, for example. And so what we've done is basically, for these kinds of verbs, we've actually, or sentences, we have two pictures or videos. We have one where you have the believer or knower, and then the belief or knowing is actually just a relationship, right? And so we have a graphic depicting that relationship, and then we have another video showing what the actual belief or knowledge is, right? So if I said I believe that mice are fun. I don't know. So I would have this relationship between myself and this proposition that mice are fun, and then you would have a different relationship with no, for example, and so we would have a different picture or graphic to depict that different relationship. The actual structure of the sentence is the same, but we would sort of use these graphics to try to get you to engage with what's really going on semantically behind the scenes.
Yeah. And because of the way it drills you really internalize these things, I find, in the course. You've got an aptometis, STE teen, very, very clear what argument is the case involved. Now, we do need to wrap this up because I've had you for almost an hour now. I was going to ask you about, relation to other current trends, relevance theory, discourse analysis and such like, but that will probably take too long. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the future of Biblingo. Are you planning perhaps to include other languages, Latin or Aramaic?
Yeah, so the future, kind of the three big things are, one, a mobile app. We're coming out with a desktop app in soon, very soon, a few weeks. And then a mobile app would be the next thing that people have asked us about over and over and over again. As far as the languages go, Aramaic is definitely the next one on the list. We probably will not, I don't know, we go back and forth on Latin. It wouldn't be next because there are so many other good resources for Latin. But we would probably do, some of the other Semitic languages, like Ugaritic or Akkadian or that kind of thing. And then the other big thing that we have planned is to add in more texts to the byreading module. So the Septuagint, but also, just Josephus, Philo, right? Dead Sea Scrolls. So if you have that, right, then you're looking at just a much broader corpus, right? And you can, again, keep track of all the words. You can sort it by words and so that way you can get into a lot more texts, again, in a way that makes sense.
Well, that sounds thoroughly exciting. I look forward to all of those developments. Kevin, thank you so much for your time and for coming on to Biblingo. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this interview. If you're interested, of course, do have a look at Biblingo online. Is it biblingo.com simply?
Biblingo.org. You can type in either one. It'll work. So.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to hearing from you. If you experienced the course, how you find it. Be in touch. Anyway, thank you very much, Kevin, and until next time.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to OnScript, delectable conversations on scripture and theology. If this episode has brought you inner peace or lit your biblical fire, please consider a small donation of just $2 or $5 per month. Information on how to donate can be found at onscript.study/donate.